My wife, the CEO, sent. I changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now, haha. Expecting me to come begging. 2 days later, their lawyer emailed. We have a problem. Call immediately. It was 11:27 p.m., that strange hour when even the streetlights look tired and the only thing keeping you company is the faint hum of regret from your refrigerator. I was half asleep on the couch, TV still playing a rerun of Shark Tank, when my phone buzzed. Normally, I'd ignore it, because who texts a married man that late? But then again, my wife, Bianca, wasn't exactly normal. So, I reached for it. The screen lit up, and there it was. Her message. I changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now. Haha. For a full 60 seconds, I just stared at the text like it might rearrange itself into something less insane. Maybe autocorrect had turned, I love you, good night, into I evicted you, loser. I waited for a follow-up. Something like, oops, wrong husband. But nope, the dots never came. Just that haha at the end, like she'd signed off a psychotic breakup with a giggle. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. What was I supposed to reply? A crying emoji? The classic K? A dramatic paragraph about betrayal and lost love? I considered it all. But instead of rage, heartbreak, or whatever reaction she was fishing for, I did something even I didn't expect. I laughed. One of those low, dry, sarcastic laughs that start in your chest and echo through your bones. The kind that says, oh, I see. We've officially reached the comedy portion of the tragedy. You have to understand something. Bianca wasn't just my wife. She was a walking, talking TED Talk on control. She planned our vacations down to bathroom breaks, timed my grocery runs, and once sent me a PowerPoint about improving communication within our marriage. I thought it was a joke until I saw it had transitions and sound effects. The woman's entire personality was schedule everything, feel nothing. And now, apparently, she'd decided to schedule my homelessness. I stared around the apartment. Technically our house, but she'd taken over so completely that even the air felt leased from her. The throw pillows, Bianca Rivera's signature collection, the coffee mugs, monogrammed with her initials, BRH, as if I'd been living in a brand partnership, not a marriage. She'd even labeled the Wi-Fi network Queen B_HQ, and I had still married her. What can I say? Love makes you stupid, horny, and blind, usually in that order. But here's the punchline. The house she was so proud of, the one she just locked me out of. I'd been the one paying the mortgage for years. Every month, like clockwork. The bills, the property taxes, the renovation loans, all drafted straight from my account. So, if she wanted to play eviction notice, fine. She just kicked her own wallet out. I couldn't even be mad. It was too poetic. Like watching a villain slip on her own banana peel. Still, as much as I wanted to bask in the karmic brilliance of it, there was the practical side of me, the accountant brain, that whispered, okay, smartass, where are you sleeping tonight? I looked out the window. The street was empty except for a raccoon digging through someone's trash like it was auditioning for Survivor, Suburbia. The idea of sleeping in my car crossed my mind, but that would have just completed my transformation into a country song. I had a little dignity left. So, I did what any rational man would do in a moment like that. I grabbed a beer, sank deeper into the couch, and started planning revenge. Not the movie kind with explosions and leather jackets. My version was quieter, cleaner, and had spreadsheets. I'm an accountant, remember? I do damage with decimals. I cracked open the beer and scrolled back through old messages. There it was. Every Venmo request she'd ever sent me. Can you cover dinner, babe? The landscaper's invoice came in, handle it. Just ordered new curtains. I'll pay you back. Spoiler, she never did. I smiled, that kind of slow, evil smile villains make right before they press the big red button. Because this wasn't going to end with tears or begging. It was going to end with paperwork, and trust me, no one does paperwork like me. Then my phone buzzed again. For a hopeful half-second, I thought she might be apologizing. Maybe she'd had too much wine and realized evicting your husband via text was bad PR for a women in leadership influencer. But no, she doubled down. Don't bother coming back tomorrow either. I already called the locksmith. Oh, and I'll be keeping the dog. He likes stability. The dog. She brought up Max, our golden retriever, the only member of the household who didn't judge me for breathing too loud. I took another sip of beer, the carbonation burning down my throat like liquid sarcasm. She's keeping the dog? I muttered. That's how you know it's war. For context, Max and I had a bond forged in mutual trauma. He hated her fancy vegan dog treats. I hated her $90 quinoa bowls. We were allies. And now she'd taken him hostage. It was like she'd studied emotional warfare at Harvard. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't her. It was Marcus, my best friend since college and currently the only lawyer who still answers my calls after 10 p.m. Yo, you up? He texted. Barely, I replied. Bianca just evicted me via SMS. A minute later, he called. You're kidding. Nope. She changed the locks. Even added a ha. He let out a long whistle. Damn. Cold-blooded. Night? And I'm the one paying for the place. Please tell me you've still got all the payment records. I smiled. Marcus, I've got color-coded tabs and backup PDFs. That's my boy, he said, chuckling. She thinks she's kicking you out, but what she really did was hand you a legal sledgehammer. Sit tight. Tomorrow, we're making her regret ever discovering emojis. After we hung up, I tossed my phone on the coffee table and looked around the room again. Everywhere I looked screamed her. The decor was all sterile perfection, neutral tones, geometric art, not a single sign that an actual human lived here. Even the air smelled like eucalyptus and superiority. And yet, underneath all that curated perfection, I could feel the cracks. The silence was too heavy, too clean, too final. I got up, grabbed an overnight bag, and stuffed it with the essentials. Laptop, toothbrush, spare shirt, and my folder labeled House Docs. Because if I was getting kicked out, I was doing it with receipts. As I zipped the bag, I caught my reflection in the mirror, tired eyes, a faint smirk, and a weird calm I didn't expect. Maybe it was the beer, or maybe it was the realization that this was the beginning of something better. Bianca had spent years trying to make me smaller, less of a husband, more of an accessory. But she'd made one fatal mistake. She forgot accountants never delete anything. I had records, and patience, and, apparently, nowhere to sleep tonight. But hey, small details. So, I grabbed my keys, walked outside, and sat in my car. I didn't start it right away. Instead, I leaned back and stared at the house, our so-called home, illuminated by that smug porch light she'd insisted on buying from Italy. Somewhere inside, she was probably celebrating, thinking she'd finally won. That I'd show up tomorrow groveling or crying or whatever fantasy made her feel powerful. But nah, I wasn't playing that game anymore. I wasn't her intern, her project, or her brand mascot. I was Adrian Holt, and I was about to turn her little eviction stunt into the most expensive haha in marital history. As I drove off, I passed the glowing for sale sign on the house down the street and chuckled. Don't worry, sweetheart, I muttered, glancing at the mirror. Yours will have one of those soon enough. I stopped by a 24-hour diner, one of those greasy spoons that smells like coffee and regret, and ordered pancakes because if my life was falling apart, I was doing it with syrup. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with Brenda on her name tag and a voice like gravel and empathy, poured me coffee. Rough night? She asked. Let's just say my wife texted me out of my own house. Brenda blinked. She texted you? Yep. Changed the locks, too. Apparently, bravery is measured in deadbolts now. She shook her head. Honey, that woman sounds like a Lifetime movie waiting to happen. Exactly. Except I'm the guy in the background making spreadsheets instead of escaping in a convertible. She laughed, slid me an extra pancake, and said, on the house. You look like you could use a win. And that's when it hit me, she was right. This wasn't a loss. It was the start of the turnaround montage. Every good story needs a moment where the main guy hits rock bottom, right before he rises. And if my rock bottom came with pancakes and free refills, I'd take it. When I finally left the diner, the sky was starting to lighten, soft blues creeping over the horizon. I climbed back into my car, took a deep breath, and smiled to myself. The old me would have gone back, tried to fix things, begged for peace. But not tonight. Tonight, I'd found something better than peace. I'd found purpose, and the receipt folder to go with it. Bianca thought she'd ended our marriage with a text message. She didn't realize she'd just triggered a financial apocalypse with a Wi-Fi connection. And me? I was just getting started. My name's Adrian Holt. I'm 40 years old, own 3 suits, 2 regrets, and 1 marriage that could double as a corporate merger gone bad. I used to think I was marrying a person. Turns out, I married a business model with perfect teeth and quarterly performance reviews. Bianca Rivera Holt, my wife, my boss, my cautionary tale, wasn't born so much as she was launched, probably with a press release and ribbon-cutting ceremony. The first time I met her, she was giving a keynote speech at some networking gala I was dragged to by a coworker. I was the guy by the free wine table, pretending to care about synergy while mentally calculating how much the shrimp platter cost. Then she walked in, tailored navy pantsuit, hair sleek enough to reflect light, the kind of confidence that makes men suddenly stand up straighter and question their life choices. She moved through the room like she owned it, and honestly, she probably did. She was magnetic. When she laughed, people listened like it was stock advice. When she spoke, waiters stopped mid-pour. And when her eyes landed on me, holding my half-empty glass of mediocre Merlot, she smiled like she'd just spotted a business opportunity. I didn't stand a chance. We talked that night. Well, she talked, and I tried to keep up. She told me about her luxury consulting firm, Rivera Strategies. I build legacies, she said. People hire me to make their brands unforgettable. I joked, you think you could do that for an accountant? She looked me up and down, smirked, and said, depends on the budget. That should have been my first warning sign. She charged by the hour for emotional labor. Fast forward 6 months, and somehow I was the idiot who thought dating a CEO was a good idea. Everything about Bianca screamed high maintenance wrapped in ambition. Our dates had PowerPoint agendas. She'd schedule quality time between investor calls. She never ate bread, claimed carbs, fogged the vision. Meanwhile, I was the guy eating leftover Chinese in bed watching The Office. We were opposites. I thought that meant balance. Turns out, it just meant chaos in heels. When we got married, I didn't even notice the red flags because they were camouflaged by rose petals and a $10,000 floral arch. The ceremony was elegant, sterile, and ran on time, because of course it did. She even gave a thank you speech at our wedding reception that sounded suspiciously like a quarterly earnings report. Together, we'll continue to grow, innovate, and expand our horizons, she said, champagne glass raised. And there I was, nodding like a shareholder. Our honeymoon. Don't even get me started. She took conference calls between spa treatments and made me take candid photos of her by infinity pools for Instagram captions about balance. I remember lying on the beach, sunburnt and confused, thinking, did I just marry a vacationing corporation? Then we got home. That's when the merger really began. Within a week, she'd rearranged the house for productivity. My gaming setup? Gone. Too distracting. My recliner? Replaced with an ergonomic chair that felt like punishment. The woman even labeled the fridge shelves with sticky notes. Protein zone, meal prep area, do not touch, client gift. My crime. Putting orange juice next to her almond milk. At first, I laughed it off. Love makes you excuse everything. You tell yourself she's just driven, focused, passionate. Words that sound romantic until you realize they're synonyms for tyrant. I'd come home from work exhausted, dreaming of Netflix and silence, and she'd greet me with, did you email the caterer for my networking brunch? Like I was her unpaid assistant. And oh, I was. My job title unofficially changed from husband to executive intern. I handled house bills, coordinated dry cleaning, ironed her power blazers like they were sacred relics, and still somehow got told, you should be grateful to be part of my brand. Her brand. Not our life. Her brand. I swear, she'd trademark her own reflection if she could. Her parents didn't help either. Martin and Clarissa Rivera, old money, older opinions. They treated me like a rescue project, the underachieving man their brilliant daughter decided to rehabilitate. Clarissa once said, Bianca always did have a soft spot for potential. I smiled through it, but inside I wanted to respond. Lady, I'm not a GoFundMe. Martin was worse. The guy wore loafers indoors and called me champ, in the same tone you'd use for a toddler trying to tie his shoes. At dinners, he'd ask questions like, so, Adrian, when do you think you'll move beyond accounting? I'd say, when America moves beyond taxes, sir. He didn't laugh. Bianca, of course, scolded me later. You can't antagonize my father, she said. He's an investor. Investor? In what? Our marriage. Her little sister, Sabrina, occasionally lived with us while she found herself. Translation, She freeloaded and filmed TikToks about manifesting wealth while eating my groceries. She'd flounce around in designer pajamas, telling me, "You know, Adrian, you're so lucky. My sister could have married anyone." I'd smile and say, "Yeah, I remind myself every day." Usually while doing her laundry because apparently I was the help now. Every aspect of life with Bianca was an event. Dinner wasn't dinner. It was a curated dining experience. She'd plate food like a Michelin chef, then take photos for content. We couldn't just watch TV. It had to be a media debrief. And God forbid I ever show up tired or disinterested. "Energy is contagious," she'd say, sipping her green juice. "You should project success." "Lady, it's 7 a.m. and I'm trying not to project murder." But here's the thing. I loved her. Or maybe I loved who I thought she was before the quarterly reports took over. When it was good, it was really good. She was funny, charismatic, and could make you feel like the only person in the world, until she made someone else feel that way, usually a client with a bigger checkbook. I used to think we were partners. Then I realized I was more like a silent investor in her empire of self-importance. The cracks started showing about 3 years in. She began taking business trips that sounded suspiciously like luxury retreats. I'd get photos of sunsets captioned, "Networking vibes, palm tree sparkles." Networking? Sure, because nothing says professional synergy like mojitos and shirtless life coaches named Tyler. When I asked questions, she'd sigh like I'd interrupted world peace. "Adrian, you don't understand the pressures of leadership." No, but I understood hypocrisy just fine. Meanwhile, her firm grew, and so did her ego. She got featured in some Forbes Women to Watch article and came home acting like royalty. "You know, Adrian, not everyone can handle being married to someone with this kind of ambition." I said, "Don't worry, I'm surviving on humility and leftover lasagna." She didn't laugh. By year 5, we'd reached an unspoken agreement. I handled the house. She handled everything else. We barely talked unless it was about logistics. It was like living in an airport terminal, always moving, never arriving. I kept trying, though. I cooked, cleaned, even set up surprise date nights. One time I booked us a weekend getaway. She canceled because a high-profile client needed urgent branding. The client? Her ex-boyfriend, now a fitness influencer. I didn't even argue. I just opened a new Excel sheet titled Red Flags, Historical Data. You'd think I'd have snapped earlier, but I'm an accountant. My coping mechanism is quiet suffering and color-coded budgeting. I figured things would settle down eventually, that she'd remember I was more than a man-shaped assistant. Instead, she doubled down. She'd hold meetings from the living room and introduce me to her colleagues like I was part of the decor. "That's Adrian. He's around." "Around? Ma'am, I'm paying for the Wi-Fi powering your little empire." Then came the ultimate humiliation. One evening, she invited her team over for a casual brainstorming dinner. I spent all day cooking, cleaning, setting the table. I even wore a collared shirt because apparently sweatpants are off-brand. During dinner, one of her associates asked how we met. Before I could answer, Bianca said, "Oh, Adrian was one of my early projects." I saw potential and couldn't resist. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, mostly because I didn't want to cry in front of strangers eating my lasagna. But inside, something cracked. I realized I'd stopped being her husband long ago. I was now her case study in charity. That night, after everyone left and she was too busy checking LinkedIn to notice me, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the dishes. I thought about all the little ways I'd compromised. Every time I bit my tongue, every moment I tried to shrink myself to fit her spotlight. And for what? So I could be introduced like an HR-approved accessory? Don't get me wrong. Bianca wasn't evil. She was just raised to believe the world was a competition and everyone else was staff. Her parents fed that monster. Her sister idolized it. I just happened to be dumb enough to marry it. Somewhere between the ambition and the Instagram filters, she forgot what partnership looked like. And somewhere along the line, I forgot I deserved better. But that night, something shifted. I poured myself a whiskey, looked around our immaculate kitchen, her trophies, her awards, her motivational quotes on the wall. Dream. Hustle. Repeat. And I laughed. A long, tired laugh that sounded way too much like freedom warming up. Because deep down, I knew the truth. When someone treats you like an employee in your own marriage, the only promotion left is leaving. I didn't know it yet, but the spreadsheet version of me was already building a case. File. Every condescending comment, every bill, every emotional receipt, it was all quietly stacking up. I'd spent years being her background character. Soon enough, I'd be the plot twist she didn't see coming. If Pottery Barn and a boardroom had a baby, it would be our house. Everything was white marble, chrome accents, and absolutely zero warmth. You couldn't even sneeze without it echoing like a PowerPoint transition sound. Bianca called it modern minimalism. I called it emotional bankruptcy with throw pillows. She had curated every corner to reflect success. No family photos, no personal clutter, just sterile perfection. Even the thermostat seemed afraid to go above 70 degrees. And that's saying something, because so was I. Our home was less of a living space and more of a museum exhibit titled The Woman Who Conquered Marriage and Decorated the Hell Out of It. There was no room for comfort, just aesthetic cohesion. I once tried to hang up a framed photo of us from our honeymoon. Bianca confiscated it within the hour. "The colors don't match the palette," she said. "We're going for ivory, not nostalgia." I swear, living there felt like being the unpaid security guard at her personal art installation. And then there was Sabrina, her younger sister. If narcissism had an understudy, it'd be her. She moved in temporarily while figuring out her career path. Translation: she lived rent-free, filmed lip-sync videos in the living room, and treated me like her personal Uber Eats driver. She'd come home from influencer meetings, which I'm convinced were just overpriced brunches, toss her designer bag on the couch, and say, "Adrian, can you fix my flat tire?" I'd do it myself, but my nails are still curing. I wanted to reply, "Sabrina, I'd help, but my will to live is still drying," but I bit my tongue. Still, I played along. I told myself, she's family. It's temporary. Be patient. Spoiler, that phrase became my personal prayer chant for the next year. Sabrina was the kind of person who'd borrow your charger, then act like she invented electricity. Every day was a new performance. She'd stand in front of the mirror rehearsing lines for her brand partnerships, like she was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. Meanwhile, Bianca cheered her on. "She's building her presence, Adrian," she'd say. "She's networking." "Networking," I said. "She's lip-syncing to Doja Cat in her pajamas." But in our house, image was everything. Bianca's motto was "Appearances are assets." You couldn't relax without it being a PR violation. We had a cleaning schedule that could rival NASA's launch protocols. Everything was timed, color-coded, and stress-inducing. One night, I accidentally used a decorative towel after washing my hands. She looked at me like I'd wiped my hands on the Constitution. "Those are for guests," she snapped. "We don't have guests," I said. "Exactly," she replied. "We could. That was our marriage in a nutshell. Endless preparation for a life that didn't exist. I wasn't her husband. I was a living prop. And Bianca? She wasn't a wife. She was the CEO of a two-person startup called Us, except one of us didn't have decision-making privileges. Every morning, she'd breeze through the kitchen like she was late for an earnings call. "Adrian, I've scheduled our quarterly check-in tonight," she'd say between sips of her kale smoothie. "Quarterly check-in. Yes, we need to align our goals as a couple. Lady, it's breakfast. Can I align my toast first?" The meetings always started the same. Her with her iPad, me with mild existential dread. "You're not contributing enough to our shared vision," she'd say, scrolling through her notes like an HR manager about to issue a warning. I once asked if I could bring snacks to these meetings. She said, "This isn't casual, Adrian." Right, because clearly, this marriage had to meet KPIs before dessert. At work, I managed clients and spreadsheets. At home, I managed moods and egos. Bianca ran her luxury consulting firm out of our guest room, which she rebranded as the Rivera Suite. She installed a custom glass desk, an espresso machine that sounded like a jet engine, and a sign that said boss mode on. She'd take video calls while I tried to make lunch quietly in the background. "Sorry, that's just Adrian," she'd tell clients. "He's working remotely." No, Bianca, I was working remotely from my own dignity. Her parents visited often. Martin and Clarissa Rivera, the kind of people who wore designer loungewear and smelled like condescension. They'd sit in our living room sipping imported wine, offering unsolicited commentary like it was their full-time job. "Bianca, you've really elevated this space," Clarissa would say. Then, looking at me, "Adrian, you've..." Kept it clean, I see. I'd smile through the pain. Martin would chime in, "You're lucky, son. Not every man gets to marry up." I wanted to reply, "Yeah, and not every man gets audited by his in-laws," but I valued my life. The thing is, I used to believe we were a team. But teams have communication, trust, and mutual respect. We had meeting minutes, passive-aggressive notes, and a shared Google Calendar. Love wasn't part of the business plan anymore. The last time Bianca said, "I love you," was in a text right after sending me a to-do list. I think she accidentally hit enter too soon. And yet I stayed. Partly because I was raised on the idea that marriage was work. Nobody tells you that sometimes it's unpaid labor. But mostly because I was in denial. I kept convincing myself things would get better. Maybe she'd relax. Maybe Sabrina would move out. Maybe her parents would fall into a meditation retreat and forget our address. But deep down, I knew the woman I'd married was gone, replaced by a walking LinkedIn post. Then came the night that changed everything, or at least started the countdown. It was a random Thursday. Bianca was hosting a client appreciation dinner, which basically meant she was showing off our house like a trophy case. She wanted everything perfect. I spent 6 hours prepping food, cleaning, setting the table, just so. The doorbell rang at 7. In walked her clients, wealthy couples who looked like they'd been photoshopped. Bianca sparkled. I hovered. Midway through dinner, one of the guests, a smug guy named Derek with too much gel and not enough soul, said, "Bianca, your home is stunning. You really have it all." She smiled, flashing that PR grin. "Well," she said, "behind every successful woman is a supportive man." Everyone laughed. I smiled too, because what else do you do when your dignity is the punchline? Later that night, after everyone left and Sabrina was upstairs vlogging about the vibe of abundance, Bianca and I stood in the kitchen. I was loading dishes when she said, "You were quiet tonight." "Didn't want to interrupt your brand narrative," I said. She frowned. "Don't be like that. You know how important appearances are." I shut the dishwasher and said, "Yeah, appearances. Got it." She went upstairs, heels clicking like gunfire. I stayed behind, staring at the spotless counters and feeling like the last human being left in a world made entirely of marble and ego. That's when it hit me. I wasn't living a life. I was maintaining one, like a janitor for someone else's success story. So, I started doing what I do best, collecting data. Quietly, efficiently. Every payment I made, every bill she ignored, every time I covered her business expenses with our joint account, I logged it. It started small, a folder titled Household Records. But it grew, slowly and meticulously. Late at night, while Bianca slept beside me in her silk eye mask, I'd open my laptop and document everything. Numbers don't lie, and someday, I'd need them to tell the truth for me. Sabrina noticed once. "What are you working on?" she asked, leaning over the couch with a smoothie in hand. "Just a project," I said. "Ooh, like a passion project?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, smiling faintly. "You could call it that." If she'd looked closer, she might have noticed the file names, expense summary, proof of payment, Bianca Renovation Loan 2020. But she didn't. Too busy posting another video caption, "Protect your peace." Oh, the irony. By the end of that year, I had enough documentation to make a CPA weep tears of joy. Every petty purchase, every transaction where my support went unacknowledged. It was all there, time-stamped and bulletproof. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with it yet, but something inside me knew a storm was coming. And when it hit, I'd be ready. Love, I realized, doesn't die all at once. It dies in the details, in the constant corrections, the subtle humiliations, the way she'd sigh every time I spoke like I'd interrupted her TED Talk. Somewhere between our first kiss and her first quarterly check-in, we'd turned into co-workers with a shared mortgage. Still, I smiled through it, played my part. Because if there's one thing Bianca taught me, it's how to fake it. And when you're married to a CEO who runs her marriage like a Fortune 500 company, faking it is practically a survival skill. But the funny thing about numbers? They always balance eventually. And I had every intention of collecting interest. If there's one sound that perfectly captures my marriage, it's the clinking of wine glasses over my silence. That night in March, I came home late from work, tax season hell, where accountants like me go to die quietly under fluorescent lights. I was exhausted, starving, and clutching a grocery bag like it was a life raft. Inside was a bundle of organic kale, because Bianca had declared it detox week, which meant I wasn't allowed to enjoy joy or flavor until further notice. I pushed the door open and heard voices. Hers, of course, and her mother's, Clarissa. The Rivera women were like hurricanes in heels. They didn't visit, they descended. I paused in the hallway, still holding the bag, when I caught a sentence that hit harder than any late fee ever could. "The house deed's in my name," Bianca said, tone sharp enough to slice marble. Clarissa's voice followed, smug and syrupy. "Exactly. He won't get a penny if you sell. That's the beauty of it, darling." Then Bianca laughed. "He's too soft to fight back. That one cracked something in me. Not loudly, not visibly, but deep, like a foundation shift you only notice when the walls start to crumble later." I stood there, kale slowly wilting in my grip, staring at the floor like it could offer me legal advice. You'd think I'd storm in, slam my keys down, demand an explanation like a man with a backbone and a script from a courtroom drama. But no, I'm an accountant. We process. We calculate. We let the numbers settle before making a move. So instead, I exhaled, set the grocery bag quietly on the counter, and walked past them with the calm of a man who'd just learned how much a divorce might cost. "Hey," I said, pretending I hadn't heard a word. "Got the kale you wanted." Bianca turned, surprised. "Oh, you're home." "Yeah. Crazy how time works," I said, forcing a smile. Clarissa gave me that tight, pitying grin mothers-in-law save for men they believe their daughters married beneath them. "Adrian, dear, we were just talking business. You know how it is." "Sure," I said. "You plot, I shop. It's a system." Bianca's jaw tightened, and I could tell she didn't appreciate the sarcasm. That was fine. At this point, it was all I had left in the marriage, a passive-aggressive stand-up routine performed in my own kitchen. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the mirror. My reflection looked like a man halfway through a breakdown, but too polite to finish it. Somewhere downstairs, Bianca's laughter echoed again. It used to be my favorite sound. Now it just felt like background music in a movie I didn't belong in. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop, created a new Excel file, and titled it Marital Expenses and Emotional Damages. It started as a joke, but it didn't stay that way for long. I began listing every transaction, every receipt, every time she'd said, "Can you cover this real quick?" I was building something, my silent rebellion, cell by cell, formula by formula. Bianca wanted to play corporate? Fine. I'd bring the spreadsheets. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She breezed into the kitchen in her tailored blazer, phone glued to her ear, multitasking between destroying lives and sipping her detox smoothie. "No, tell them we'll renegotiate after the merger," she said into the phone. Then to me, "Can you iron my navy suit? The steamer's acting weird again." "Of course," I said. "Wouldn't want your power outfit underperforming." She didn't even look up. "Thanks, babe. Love you. Love you." Like it was punctuation. A throwaway line between tasks. I didn't reply. I just watched her leave, heels clicking on the floor like the countdown to a hostile takeover. Later that day, I called my buddy Marcus, the lawyer with the caffeine addiction and the moral compass of a GPS rerouting through chaos. "Marcus," I said, "hypothetically, if your wife was planning to sell your house behind your back, how illegal is that?" He paused. "Define illegal." "As in, she's the only one on the deed, but I've been paying the mortgage for years." "Oh," he said, and I could hear the grin forming. "That's not illegal. That's dumb. On her part. Good dumb or lawsuit dumb. Life-ruining dumb," he said. "Keep your receipts." "Oh, I've got receipts," I said. "Color-coded, categorized, and time-stamped." "Attaboy," Marcus said. "You're about to turn marriage counseling into a courtroom thriller." That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to argue or cry or throw anything. I was going to document. Quietly, meticulously. Bianca had built her little empire on appearances, and I was about to file for demolition permits. Over the next few weeks, I turned into a one-man audit team. Every time she rolled her eyes at me, another tab. Every time Clarissa made a snide remark about men who marry up, another folder. Every time Sabrina borrowed money for content creation, that mysteriously turned into Sephora hauls, another spreadsheet. My laptop became my confessional. And through it all, I played my role perfectly. I was the dutiful husband, the soft-spoken accountant, the man too passive to fight back. Meanwhile, I was building a case that would make forensic accountants weep tears of joy. Bianca thought she was starring in her own success story. I was writing the epilogue. The funny thing is, once I stopped reacting, she got suspicious. Narcissists can smell independence like sharks smell blood. She started asking questions. "You're quiet lately. Everything okay?" "Yeah, I'd say. Just focused on work." "What kind of work?" "Long-term investments." She smiled, probably thinking I meant stocks. I didn't bother correcting her. Her sister, Sabrina, wasn't as oblivious. One afternoon, she caught me at the dining table, scanning old receipts. "What's all that?" she asked, chewing gum like it owed her money. "House records," I said. "For what?" "Transparency." She squinted. "You're weird." "Thank you," I said. That weekend, Bianca hosted a brunch for her business partners. The house was spotless, the champagne was flowing, and I was once again the unpaid staff. I made sure the glasses sparkled and the guests were impressed. Everything went smoothly until I overheard one of them say, "You're so lucky, Bianca. You've got it all. Career, looks, the house, the husband." She laughed. "Oh, the house is all me. Adrian's more of a domestic partner." Domestic partner? Like I was her pet. I kept smiling, kept pouring champagne, but inside, I swear something seismic shifted. Not rage, exactly, more like clarity. The kind of calm that comes right before a financial audit ruins your life. That night, when the guests were gone and Bianca was too busy posting #BossBrunchSuccess on Instagram, I sat in my office corner, opened my laptop, and added a new line to the spreadsheet. Public humiliation, priceless. Then I started attaching photos, renovations I'd paid for, invoices in my name, furniture receipts, even the home security system under my credit card. By the time I finished, I had a digital fortress of evidence. That's when Marcus called. "Got your email," he said. "This is gold. You've basically written my closing statement for me." "Good," I said, "because I'm tired of being a prop in her empire." "You sure you're ready for this?" I looked around the house, the pristine walls, the designer furniture, the ghosts of a marriage that used to mean something. "Yeah," I said, "I'm ready to stop being background noise." Over the next few days, I noticed something new. Freedom creeping in around the edges of my routine. I stopped jumping at her texts. I stopped rearranging my schedule to fit hers. I even stopped pretending to like her vegan casseroles, which tasted like betrayal baked in sadness. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Either way, I was invisible, and for once, I liked it that way. Then came the moment that sealed everything. We were at dinner with her parents, again. Martin was lecturing me about financial foresight, while Clarissa bragged about Bianca's latest client. I nodded, smiled, played the part. But then Bianca said it, casually, like she was ordering dessert. "We're thinking of selling the house soon. Downsizing." I froze. Clarissa smiled approvingly. "Smart move. Get ahead of the market." I set my fork down. "Funny," I said. "I didn't realize I was included in that decision." Bianca waved a hand. "Don't be dramatic. It's just logistics." "Logistics?" Like I was a line item on her to-do list. I smiled. "Oh, I love logistics." That night, I emailed Marcus everything. "See, there's a quiet kind of revenge in preparation. It's not loud or cinematic. It's patient. It's math. And as an accountant, I've always believed numbers tell stories. Hers were about power. Mine were about payback. So yeah, that was the day I officially became background noise. But what Bianca didn't know was that background noise has rhythm, and mine was counting down to the sound of her empire cracking. If you ever want to understand the true definition of control, hand an accountant a personal vendetta and an Excel sheet. That's how Operation Spreadsheet Revenge was born. Out of caffeine, insomnia, and the pure, uncut motivation of a man who'd been publicly downgraded from husband to domestic partner. The name wasn't even a joke. I wrote it at the top of my document in bold font, because if I was going to dismantle my wife's empire, I wanted it to sound like a classified Pentagon project. By day, I was still the mild-mannered accountant. Button-down shirts, polite nods, crunching numbers that didn't scream revenge fantasy. But by night, I was a silent data assassin, stalking through emails, receipts, and transaction histories like Batman with a calculator. Every Venmo transfer Bianca sent me with a cutesy message like, "Cover this, babe, 2 hearts," went into a separate folder titled Evidence of Financial Stupidity. Every business purchase that had mysteriously been charged to our joint card was cross-referenced, tagged, and archived. The woman left a paper trail so long it could have qualified as a short novel. It started small, a spreadsheet with columns, date, description, amount, and emotional suffering index, a subjective but therapeutic measure. But then, as I went deeper, something inside me awakened, some primal accountant instinct for vengeance. I began color-coding categories like a man possessed. Red for luxury expenses she swore were essential brand investments. Blue for her family's mooching, Martin's golf clubs, Clarissa's spa retreats, Sabrina's never-ending influencer supplies. Yellow for house renovations that somehow increased her status and decreased my bank balance. And finally, green, my favorite, for every single dollar that could legally come back to me. When I showed it to Marcus, my lawyer and partner in chaos, his eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. "Dude," he said, flipping through the printout. "This is cleaner than half the Fortune 500 audits I've seen." "Good," I said, sipping my coffee like a Bond villain. "Because the board meeting's coming." He grinned. "You mean court?" "Same difference. They're both filled with liars in suits." "See, the key to revenge isn't rage, it's rhythm. You can't just explode, you have to orchestrate." And while Bianca was out there thinking she'd humiliated me into silence, I was quietly preparing the kind of counterattack that could make the IRS blush. I spent nights combing through our financial history. Do you know how many times she'd borrowed from our savings for emergencies? 11. And not one of those emergencies involved actual emergencies. Once it was for urgent rebranding. Another time, a limited edition handbag for investor confidence. "Lady, no investor on earth cares about your purse unless it's full of dividends." I unearthed years of forgotten transactions. $2,500 for client bonding, read, bottomless brunch with her ex's sister. $1,800 for home office decor, which turned out to be a neon sign that said Girl Boss Energy, and $4,200 for wellness retreat, a week at a beach resort where, according to Instagram, she rediscovered her inner power while discovering mojitos and a guy named Raphael. Each time I uncovered something new, I'd add a little note in the summary column. Things like, not deductible, not forgivable, and definitely not forgotten. My personal favorite find came courtesy of Sabrina, her sister/professional freeloader. She'd used Bianca's card, our joint card, to buy $3,000 worth of LED ring lights, makeup kits, and a content creation chair that looked suspiciously like a beanbag. "Adrian, it's an investment," she'd said when I confronted her once. "You can't put a price on art." "You're right," I'd replied. "But apparently, you can put one on stupidity." I logged every dime of it. Meanwhile, Bianca continued her reign of self-importance, completely unaware that her kingdom was being audited. She'd send me texts like, "Hey babe, can you transfer $200 for client gifts?" And I'd reply, "Of course," while adding another line to the sheet. At some point, she'd stopped even pretending these were mutual decisions. I was the treasurer of her delusion, and I finally decided to call on the balance. Marcus and I met every Friday at a bar downtown. He'd order whiskey neat, I'd get a beer, and we'd review progress like villains doing quarterly reviews of Mayhem. "She's sloppy," Marcus said one night, scanning the files. "Most of this stuff is in your name or joint accounts. That's a rookie move." "She thinks she's untouchable," I said. "That's her blind spot. Pride always is." He nodded. "You're playing this right. Keep calm, keep documenting. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be over." I leaned back in my chair. "You think she suspects anything?" He grinned. "Adrian, you're an accountant. No one suspects accountants. You could bury a body under a balance sheet, and people would just say, 'Huh, impressive formulas.'" He wasn't wrong. Bianca still treated me like the quiet idiot in the corner, her emotional Roomba who existed to clean up her messes. That's the beauty of underestimation. It's camouflage for revenge. One evening, she came home from work all smiles. "Guess what?" she said, kissing my cheek absent-mindedly. "We're getting featured in Home and Style magazine. They're doing a spread on successful couples." "Successful couples?" I asked, trying not to laugh. "Yeah." I told them about how we build together. "Oh, we're building. All right," I said, smiling just enough for her to miss the sarcasm. "Brick by Legal Brick." She grinned. That's the spirit, babe. When the photo shoot day came, she made me wear a navy suit I hated. The photographer posed us like we were some power duo. Bianca had her hand on my shoulder in one shot, smiling like she'd built me in a lab. Perfect, the photographer said. You look so strong together. Oh, we are, I said. Structurally sound, but one good audit and we collapse. The guy chuckled. Bianca didn't. Later that night, she posted one of the photos with the caption, "Partnership isn't about keeping score. It's about building together." I couldn't resist commenting, totally. Some of us just build spreadsheets. She deleted it within 5 minutes. Things got tense after that. She started asking more questions, like, "Why are you on your laptop so late?" And "What are you working on lately?" I'd smile and say, "Just balancing the books." She thought I meant my clients. She had no idea the books in question were her entire financial life. Then one morning, I woke up to an email from her with the subject line, "Urgent, mortgage inquiry." My heart did a little drum solo. I opened it and saw she'd been trying to refinance the house without me. That was the moment I knew my operation had officially graduated from petty to necessary. I called Marcus. "She's refinancing." He whistled. "Oh, she's panicking. That's good. Good," I said. "She's trying to cut me out." "Exactly," he said. "And when she does, it becomes evidence of intent. Keep everything. You're sitting on gold." So I did. Screenshots, timestamps, even phone call logs. I started backing everything up to a hard drive I labeled Retirement Plan, Phase 1. And just for fun, I hid it behind her collection of designer self-help books. Think Like a Leader, Manifest Your Power, Women Who Win. Titles she loved, even though she skipped every chapter about humility. Around that time, Marcus introduced me to his friend Kelly, a forensic accountant. She was brilliant, sarcastic, and treated financial manipulation like a sport. After one glance at my files, she said, "Holy hell, this is a masterpiece." "Thanks," I said modestly. "I call it art therapy." Kelly spent a week auditing Bianca's transactions and came back with a summary that could have doubled as a crime thriller. "Your wife's company," she said, "has been funneling personal expenses under corporate write-offs. She's committing small-time fraud without realizing it." I almost choked on my coffee. "Fraud? As in illegal?" Kelly smirked. "As in you're about to win more than alimony illegal." It was poetic. The woman who prided herself on running her life like a business had turned her marriage into one, and me into the disgruntled auditor with receipts. That night, while she slept soundly next to me in her silk pajamas, I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the irony. For years, I'd been the background noise in her empire, the supporting act in her highlight reel. But now, I was the ticking clock under it all. And when it went off, she'd hear every second of what she'd ignored. I remember sitting at the kitchen counter the next morning, sipping coffee while she talked about some big pitch. She didn't notice the flash drive next to my mug, labeled simply, Q1 Review. That's the thing about narcissists. They never notice the small details until they explode in their face. As she left for work, I called Marcus. "Everything's ready," I said. "Good," he replied. "Then it's time." "Time for what?" He grinned through the phone. "For the board meeting, my friend. Operation Spreadsheet Revenge goes live." And as I hung up, I couldn't help but laugh. Not the bitter laugh I used to have. The real one. The kind that comes when you finally stop being scared. Bianca thought she'd married an accountant who wouldn't fight back. But what she really married was a man who could turn pain into profit, one perfectly balanced cell at a time. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine came with beer, pizza, and a Wi-Fi connection. The night Bianca changed the locks, she probably expected I'd show up outside like some tragic Hallmark husband, holding flowers and a broken heart. Instead, I was sitting in my rented townhouse, one sock missing, beer in hand, watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine reruns and laughing like a man who just discovered irony. The text had arrived at 11:27 p.m., that cinematic hour when bad decisions are born. "I changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now." Haha. I stared at it for a full minute, reread it twice, and then burst out laughing. Not the polite chuckle you give at work meetings, but the kind of unhinged laugh that scares the cat and makes the neighbors text, "You good, man?" Because here's the kicker. She didn't realize the house she was locking me out of was technically mine. I'd been the one paying the mortgage, maintaining the property, and funding her Pinterest-level renovations. So when she told me I didn't have a home, What she really meant was she'd just evicted herself from her own paycheck. I opened another beer, took a long sip, and called Marcus. Guess what my wife just did? Please tell me she joined a cult, he said. Because that would actually improve her character arc. Close, I said. She changed the locks. Said I don't have a home anymore. There was a pause. Then Marcus laughed so hard I thought he'd choke. Oh, Adrian. She's writing my closing statement for me. That's intent, my friend. Textbook intent. Intent to what? Become a sitcom villain. Intent to exclude you from joint property. Judges love that stuff. Screenshot everything. Already did, I said. Twice. Good. Now sit tight. Don't confront her. Don't text her. Don't breathe near her mailbox. Let her dig her own grave. She's already halfway there. Marcus, I said. She took the dog. There was silence. Max. Yeah. Claimed he needs stability. Marcus sighed. Jesus. She's weaponizing the golden retriever now. I know. She's escalating. Then you escalate smarter, he said. Tomorrow, we call the mortgage company. And that's exactly what I did. The next morning, I showed up to work with dark circles under my eyes and the kind of grin that makes coworkers whisper, he's either divorced or possessed. I handled my clients like usual, smiled through small talk, then spent my lunch break calling the mortgage lender. Hi, I said. Quick update. One of the property owners just locked the other out. Might affect future payments. The woman on the phone paused. Oh, that's unusual. You have no idea. Within hours, she'd flagged the account and added a note. Ownership dispute pending. Translation? Bianca had just triggered an internal investigation that would freeze any attempt to refinance or sell. I didn't even have to lift a legal finger. It was like watching karma do math. Meanwhile, Bianca was probably at her office bragging about how she'd taken control. That was her favorite phrase. Take control. She said it about everything. Finances, relationships, even brunch menus. She once sent back an entire meal because the eggs didn't radiate confidence. At around 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. New email. Subject, from the office of Mitchell and Green. My stomach dropped for half a second before I opened it. Mr. Holt, we represent Mrs. Rivera Holt. We have a problem. Please call us immediately. I grinned. That was fast. She must have realized her bold little lock-changing stunt had backfired faster than a cheap Tesla battery. I didn't call them, of course. I called Marcus. They're already panicking, I said. He whistled. Wow, didn't even last a full 24 hours. She's got the tactical patience of a toddler. What do I do? Nothing, he said. We do it by the book. You sit back, enjoy your pizza, and let the professionals panic for once. And so I did. I went home, cracked another beer, and ordered a large pepperoni. I turned on some music, old jazz, because if you're going to wage psychological warfare, it should have a soundtrack. Then I laughed again. It wasn't just amusement anymore, it was relief. Years of swallowing insults, nodding through arrogance, smiling through humiliation, and now, I was finally the one holding the cards. For years, Bianca had convinced me that emotions were weakness. You're too sensitive, she'd say whenever I got upset. You have to toughen up. Turns out, she was right, just not in the way she intended. I'd toughened up enough to turn her games into legal documentation. Around midnight, I got another text, short, frantic, and beautiful. You think you're smart? You'll regret this. I replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Then I blocked her. The next morning, Marcus called. You're trending. What? Well, not you exactly. But Bianca posted some vague, empowered woman nonsense on her socials about removing toxic energy from her home. Her followers are eating it up. Of course they are, I said. They don't know she's the toxic energy. Let her have her Instagram victory. The court of public opinion doesn't count toward property settlements. Wish it did, I said. I'd countersue for emotional damage caused by inspirational hashtags. He laughed. You'll get your justice, trust me. Just keep being boring. Boring. Yeah, judges love boring men. You're calm, rational, organized. She's emotional, impulsive, reckless. You keep logging everything. Emails, texts, screenshots. Let her go nuclear. You go neutral. That's how you win. I hung up and looked at my wall of sticky notes, my personal war map. Every call, every payment, every instance of her financial idiocy was neatly arranged in chronological order. My living room looked like a crime show set, but to me, it was art. That afternoon, I got another email, this time directly from Bianca. We need to talk. You're making things worse. I couldn't resist. Worse for who? I typed back. She didn't reply. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Holt, this is Sarah Mitchell, counsel for Mrs. Rivera Holt. Hi, Sarah, I said cheerfully. How's business? She hesitated. We prefer to resolve this amicably. Your wife has expressed concern about your reaction to the lock change. Oh, she's concerned now? That's adorable. Mr. Holt. Adrian, let's be practical. Bianca is willing to discuss a settlement regarding the house. Ah, a settlement. Music to my accountant ears. But you might want to check with the mortgage company before making promises. They're holding things for review. There was a pause. Review. You might also want to look at the property's payment records. I've been the sole payer for the last 6 years. Just a detail. Accountants love details. Another pause, longer this time. I see. We'll be in touch. When I hung up, I laughed again. Not because it was funny, but because it felt so damn good to be the one steering the chaos for once. For years, I'd been Bianca's emotional punching bag, her assistant, her cheerleader, her scapegoat. Now I was the calm voice on the other end of the line, and she was the one sweating over emails. That night, Marcus came over with Chinese takeout. To Operation Lockout, he toasted. I clinked my beer against his. May it continue indefinitely. You know what I love most about this? He said between bites of lo mein. She thinks she's the main character. She's always thought that. Yeah, but you're the narrator now. We both laughed, but it hit me harder than expected. He was right. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting, I was authoring. My life wasn't being dictated by her mood swings or calendar reminders. Every step she took out of arrogance, I countered with logic. Every haha she sent was another nail in her legal coffin. By the weekend, things escalated again. She tried showing up at my office, claiming she just wanted to talk. My receptionist, bless her nosy heart, texted me the moment Bianca walked in wearing sunglasses and drama. I slipped out the back door like a magician. By the time she realized I was gone, I'd already emailed Marcus. She's escalating to field visits. He replied, perfect. We'll add stalking to the list. You'd think I'd feel guilty, but I didn't. For years, she guilt-tripped me over every tiny thing, spending time with friends, watching sports, even napping. Do you ever do anything productive? She'd ask. Yeah, Bianca, I do. Just took me 10 years to start. A few nights later, while organizing some paperwork, I stumbled on a photo from our first year together. We were on a rooftop, laughing, holding champagne, still pretending we were in love. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't hate that version of us. I just pitied it. We were both pretending to be people we weren't. She wanted a husband who worshipped her. I wanted a wife who didn't treat marriage like a marketing campaign. Neither of us got what we wanted, but I was the only one humble enough to adapt. The next morning, I got the call that changed everything. Marcus's voice was practically humming with glee. The mortgage company froze her access. She can't refinance, can't sell, can't even list the property. I nearly dropped my coffee. You're kidding. Nope. She's locked out of the house and the account. Irony just called. It's asking for a tip. For a full minute, I couldn't stop laughing. The image of her standing in that pristine marble kitchen, holding her designer phone, realizing she'd trapped herself. It was poetic. All that control, all that power, and she'd used it to box herself in. That night, I celebrated with a steak dinner and a quiet sense of satisfaction. Not revenge, exactly, more like balance. The universe had finally equalized the equation. And as I sat there, fork in hand, music low, lights dim, I realized I didn't even hate her anymore. You can't hate someone who's already destroyed themselves trying to destroy you. I poured another drink, raised the glass to no one in particular, and said, here's to locks, laughter, and late-night karma. Because sometimes, victory doesn't roar, it chuckles. There's a certain smell every office has. A combination of burnt coffee, recycled air, and bad decisions. The mediation room smelled exactly like that, plus an undertone of smugness that could only come from my soon-to-be ex-wife, Bianca Rivera Holt. It was Judgment Day, and the conference table was our battlefield. I walked in carrying a binder thick enough to qualify as a weapon, while she strutted in wearing a $2,000 suit and her trademark, I own the room, expression. Behind her were her parents, Martin and Clarissa, dressed like backup dancers for a condescension-themed musical. Her lawyer, some guy named Todd who looked like he'd been born in a blazer, stood and offered me a polite smile. "Mr. Holt," he said, "thank you for being here." I nodded. "Trust me, I wouldn't miss this for the world. I've been emotionally RSVPing for years." Then there was Marcus, my lawyer, my best friend, and the only man alive who could read a courtroom the way Gordon Ramsay reads a raw steak. He dropped his briefcase on the table with a satisfying thunk, looked Bianca dead in the eye, and said, "Let's begin." Bianca sat down first, crossing her legs like she was auditioning for a perfume commercial. "Adrian," she said, voice smooth but dripping with disdain, "I really wish it hadn't come to this." "Oh, same," I said, flipping open my binder. "I thought we'd go another few months before you tried to turn my life into a corporate hostile takeover." Clarissa gasped softly, clutching her pearls, because of course she wore pearls. Martin just glared like a man who thought anger counted as an argument. Todd cleared his throat. "Let's try to remain civil. We're here to reach an amicable solution." "Amicable?" Marcus echoed, smirking. "Todd," she changed the locks and stole the dog. "We're well past amicable. This is gladiator court with better lighting." Todd adjusted his tie. "We're simply here to discuss asset distribution." "Perfect," I said, handing over a printed spreadsheet with tabs. "Let's distribute." Bianca's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" "Evidence," Marcus said casually. 14 years worth of payments, transfers, renovations, and that small thing called the mortgage, all paid from Mr. Holt's account. I watched the color drain from her face like someone had just unplugged her confidence. She tried to laugh it off. "Please. We shared everything. It was joint." "Joint," Marcus said, flipping to a page. "That's interesting because your name doesn't appear on a single payment statement. Not one." He slid the papers across the table like a blackjack dealer with receipts instead of cards. Todd skimmed through, frowning. "We'll need time to verify." "Oh, take all the time you need," Marcus said, leaning back. "We've got copies, bank statements, and transaction histories dating back to the day they bought the house. You'll notice that every financial thread leads straight to my client." Bianca's lips tightened. "This is absurd." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You know what's absurd? Locking a man out of the home he's been paying for while bragging about empowerment on Instagram." Clarissa jumped in like the self-appointed queen of bad timing. "Bianca, don't let him get to you. He's just bitter." "Actually," I said, smiling, "I'm surprisingly well-rested." The room went quiet except for the faint hum of the overhead lights. Todd adjusted his glasses. "Let's be practical. Mrs. Rivera Holt's company, Rivera Strategies, was built during the marriage. Surely, Mr. Holt benefited from that success." Marcus laughed so hard I thought he might choke. "Oh, you mean the company that funneled personal expenses under corporate write-offs? The one that claimed luxury handbags as brand investments?" "Yeah, we've got spreadsheets on that too." Bianca's head snapped toward him. "You had no right to access my business records." Marcus smiled calmly. "Actually, your husband did. Joint accounts, remember? Transparency clause in your company's original partnership filing. You might have read it if you hadn't been too busy labeling folders with motivational quotes." Even Todd had to swallow a smirk. Bianca looked like she wanted to throw something. "You're pathetic," she hissed at me, dragging this into the mud like some petty accountant. "Oh, honey," I said, leaning forward. "I'm not dragging it. I'm itemizing it." Clarissa gasped again, probably out of habit. Martin slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. Family doesn't keep score." Marcus tilted his head. "Then why is your daughter charging her husband rent?" You could have heard a pin drop. The silence was so thick you could butter it. Todd pretended to check his notes just to avoid making eye contact. Bianca's jaw clenched. "Adrian," she said through gritted teeth, "you don't have to make this ugly." "Oh, I'm not making it ugly," I said, shrugging. "I'm just showing everyone the original design." That's when Marcus stood and began pacing slowly, like a lion that knew the meal was already dead. "Your Honor," he caught himself and grinned. "Sorry, force of habit. Gentlemen, ladies, what we have here is a clear case of financial exploitation. My client has provided not only monetary support, but also unpaid labor as house manager, maintenance worker, and accountant. For over a decade, he handled every bill, repair, and expense while Mrs. Rivera Holt publicly presented the property, his investment, as her own achievement. Now she's attempting to exclude him entirely. I'd call that unethical. The law calls it something else. Todd squirmed. There's no need for theatrics. Marcus smiled. Buddy, this is the theater. And my guy here's the headliner. Bianca glared at me. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I met her gaze. Not enjoying. Just appreciating symmetry. She scoffed. You think you've won because you brought paperwork? Please. You're nothing without me. Oh, absolutely, I said. I'm just the guy who's nothing paid for your everything. Even Todd coughed at that one. Clarissa leaned in. Bianca, maybe we should settle. Mother, Bianca snapped. Don't start. But it was too late. Marcus had already pulled out the next bomb, the text message. The infamous lock-changing declaration of war. He projected it on the screen for everyone to see. I changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now. Haha. Todd's face went pale. Oh God. Marcus grinned. Textbook intent to exclude. My personal favorite. Bianca's voice cracked for the first time. That was taken out of context. Marcus crossed his arms. I'm sorry, what's the context for haha after eviction? I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered every time she'd humiliated me at dinner parties, every lecture about gratitude, every smirk when her parents implied I wasn't good enough. That empathy evaporated faster than her credibility. Todd tried one last Hail Mary. Perhaps we could consider a buyout? Marcus glanced at me. Half the property value, minimum, plus legal fees. Bianca scoffed. You're insane. No, Marcus said, grinning. I'm caffeinated. Then I spoke, my voice steady and calm. Look, Bianca, this doesn't have to be complicated. You wanted control. Fine. Keep your name on your empire, your Instagram, your public image. But the numbers don't lie. I own half. You know it, your lawyer knows it, and deep down, your parents know it too. Clarissa opened her mouth, but Marcus held up a hand. Ma'am, please, let the math speak. Bianca slammed her pen down. You're pathetic, Adrian. Maybe, I said, smiling faintly. But I'm also patient. And patience compounds like interest. Todd sighed, defeated. We'll review the offer. Marcus nodded. Take your time. We'll be waiting, with calculators. As they gathered their papers, Martin muttered, This isn't over. I smiled. Oh, it's over. You just haven't updated your files yet. Bianca stood, straightened her suit, and looked down at me like she still believed she held the upper hand. You'll regret embarrassing me, she said. Bianca, I said, standing too. I didn't embarrass you. I just stopped doing it for free. Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought she might actually hit me with her purse. But instead, she turned and stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots against the tile. Clarissa trailed after her, whispering about appearances. Martin followed, muttering something about ungrateful men. As the door closed, Marcus leaned back in his chair, exhaled, and said, That, my friend, was beautiful. I sank into my seat, adrenaline fading. I feel like I just survived a corporate exorcism. He grinned. You didn't survive it, you hosted it. We gathered our things, and as we walked out, he clapped me on the shoulder. You did good today. Kept calm, hit hard, and smiled while doing it. Judges eat that up. Think it's enough? I asked. He smirked. Oh, it's more than enough. Her empire's built on ego, not equity. You just introduced her to both. We walked into the parking lot, the sun glaring off the cars, and I finally exhaled. I'd spent years being quiet, shrinking to fit her narrative. But today, I'd spoken in the only language she respected, numbers and confidence. And for the first time, I wasn't background noise. I was the headline. As Marcus drove off, I sat in my car for a while, staring at the binder in my lap. Every page in there represented a piece of my patience, my endurance, my silent proof. And now, finally, it was paying dividends. Bianca had her followers, her image, her brand. But I had something better, the truth, neatly formatted in 12-point font with color-coded tabs. When I started the engine, I couldn't help but laugh. Not bitterly, not sarcastically this time, just freely, because the numbers were finally on my side. 6 weeks later, the court's decision came in, and I swear it was the most satisfying email I've ever opened in my life. No fireworks, no confetti, no dramatic background music, just a crisp PDF with the header, Final Judgment. I clicked it open and read the line that made every sleepless night worth it. Equal distribution of property. 50% ownership awarded to Mr. Adrian Holt. 50% ownership. The same house she had locked me out of, the same house she'd strutted around calling her domain, was now legally half mine. I almost printed it and framed it like a diploma from the University of Poetic Justice. Marcus called within 5 minutes. So, Mr. 50%, how's it feel to be officially vindicated? I grinned into the phone, like I just got promoted to CEO of Karma Incorporated. He laughed. You earned it, man. You played it cool, kept your receipts, and let her ego do all the heavy lifting. Her ego and her $2,000 lawyer, I said. Don't forget Todd. Ah, yes, Marcus chuckled. Todd, the man who thought screenshots were optional. It was poetic. All the meticulous documentation, the financial breadcrumbs, the late-night spreadsheets, it had all paid off. Bianca's empire of control had crumbled under the weight of its own arrogance. When the verdict hit, she tried to play it off online like nothing had happened. Her Instagram post that day read, "When life throws challenges your way, stay graceful and strong." Translation: I just lost half my house to my accountant husband. I didn't gloat publicly. That wasn't my style. I preferred quieter victories, the kind you sip coffee over while your opponent drafts apologies in their head. I didn't move back into the house either. I could have legally, but I didn't want it anymore. That place was haunted, not by ghosts, but by the version of myself that used to live there. The man who walked on eggshells, apologized for breathing too loudly, and thought silence was the price of peace. No thanks. I'd rather pay rent on freedom. So I forced a sale. My half, her half, all of it. Let the market decide our closure. The listing went up within a week. The realtor was a chipper young guy named Trevor who spoke exclusively in hashtags. We're talking hashtag modern luxury meets hashtag timeless elegance, he said during the walkthrough. I looked around at the gleaming countertops and sterile decor. We're talking hashtag overpriced and hashtag emotionally exhausting, I muttered. Bianca, of course, wanted to collaborate on presentation. She insisted on keeping her designer touches in the listing photos. Buyers need to see the lifestyle, she said. I shrugged. You mean the lifestyle you can't afford anymore? Her eyes narrowed. You're really proud of yourself, huh? Not proud, I said, smiling. Just solvent. Trevor awkwardly cleared his throat and started taking photos while pretending not to witness the passive-aggressive Olympics unfolding in front of him. The house sold faster than expected. The market was hot, and apparently, people will pay top dollar for marble countertops and bad energy. Final offer, $710,000. Split down the middle, I walked away with roughly $355,000 after fees. I didn't even need all of it. What I needed was the symbolism. Every dollar felt like a refund for years of unpaid emotional labor. Bianca didn't take it so gracefully. She texted me after closing day. You really think money fixes everything? I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. No, but it sure makes revenge taste better. Then I muted her number. With my cut, I bought a cozy townhouse downtown. 2 bedrooms, a small balcony, and, most importantly, no trace of her. No motivational wall art, no lavender-scented candles named things like Boss Aura. Just peace, plain and simple. I didn't even care that the water pressure was mediocre or that my neighbor's dog barked like it was in a punk band. Freedom has a funny way of making flaws feel charming. Marcus helped me move in. Damn, he said, setting down a box labeled kitchen stuff I actually own. This place feels peaceful. That's because no one's timing your coffee breaks or critiquing your sock choices, I said. He laughed. You should throw a housewarming party. Celebrate the end of dictatorship. I might, I said, but the guest list is short. Just you, pizza, and maybe Max if I can steal him back. Ah, Max, the golden retriever trader. I hadn't seen him since the lockout, but rumor had it Bianca still paraded him around like a PR prop. I figured he deserved better. One day, I'd fix that too. A week later, I got an email from the realtor. Congratulations, sale finalized. Attached were the closing documents. I stared at them, the digital signatures, the wire transfer confirmation. It was over. The empire was dismantled, the assets split, the war officially won. And for the first time in years, I exhaled without feeling like I owed anyone an explanation. To celebrate, I did something revolutionary. Nothing. I didn't go out, didn't post, didn't brag. I sat on my couch, cracked open a beer, and watched reruns of The Office in total silence. It was bliss. A few days later, Marcus called again. Guess who just filed for another business loan? Let me guess, I said. Queen bankruptcy herself? Bingo. Rivera Strategies is trying to rebrand after the, quote, personal challenges of recent months. I laughed. Rebrand. She's acting like she survived a stock market crash, not a divorce she caused. Ego's a hell of a drug, Marcus said. But don't worry. She'll implode faster than her cash flow. He wasn't wrong. Within a month, Bianca's carefully curated image started to unravel. Clients backed out, sponsorships dried up, and her once-daily posts turned into motivational quotes about new beginnings and healing through hustle. Translation: no one was hiring her. Even Clarissa and Martin were forced to downsize to a retirement condo with creaky floors and zero marble. Karma had gone full accountant. It balanced every account. I didn't wish her ill. I just didn't wish her anything. Indifference is the quietest form of revenge, and man, it's powerful. One afternoon, while walking past a cafe downtown, I spotted her through the window. She was sitting alone, scrolling on her phone with that same tight smile she used to wear when pretending to be fine. For a split second, our eyes met. She froze. I raised my coffee cup in a mock toast, then walked away. No words, no confrontation. Just numbers speaking louder than tears. Later that night, I got a text from her. We could have worked it out. I stared at it for a while, then replied, yeah, but then I'd still be miserable. And I'm kind of booked for peace right now. She didn't answer after that. Probably too busy convincing herself she was the hero of her own tragedy. The next morning, I sat on my balcony, watching the city wake up. Cars honked, people hustled, and for once, I wasn't in a rush. I brewed my own coffee, strong, bitter, and perfectly mine, and looked around my little townhouse. No sterile marble, no curated perfection, no ambient scent of manipulation. Just me, my mess, and my music. I realized that freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like silence that doesn't hurt anymore. Marcus texted me later that morning. So, what's next for the newly liberated Adrian Holt? I replied, therapy, gym, and maybe a dog that doesn't get used for photo ops. He sent back a laughing emoji. Proud of you, man. You pulled off the cleanest breakup in history. Yeah, I typed. Guess numbers really do speak louder than tears. I spent the afternoon setting up my workspace. Just a simple desk, my laptop, and a framed quote I found at a thrift store. Success is the best apology. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was chasing peace. But every once in a while, I'd glance at my spreadsheets, the same ones that started it all, and smile. They weren't just financial records anymore. They were my story. Proof that even when people underestimate you, facts don't. And the numbers? They never lied. They whispered freedom in formulas, closure in cell references, and quiet vindication in clean balances. Bianca had always believed emotions were weakness. She never realized that math was the purest form of emotion, precise, fair, and completely unforgiving. The house, her brand, her image. They were all numbers now. Debits, credits, losses, assets. All reduced to data in a story I'd already closed the books on. That night, as I locked the door to my new home, I caught my reflection in the glass. I looked older, sure, but lighter, happier, like a man who'd finally audited his own life and written off the bad investments. I raised my beer, looked around at the quiet room, and said softly, to balance sheets and better beginnings. Because at the end of the day, the numbers had done what tears never could. They told the truth. And for the first time in a long time, the math added up in my favor. The day the wire transfer hit my account, I swear I heard angels singing, or maybe that was just the sound of my bank app updating. Either way, it was the sweetest melody I'd ever heard. $355,000. Crisp, clean, indisputable. The final payout from the house Bianca once called our legacy. Turns out our legacy had great resale value. I sat there in my new townhouse, coffee mug in hand, staring at the notification like it was the Mona Lisa of closure. No confetti, no champagne, just peace, and a balance high enough to make my past feel like a bad investment I'd finally recouped. Marcus called the second I screenshotted it. It's in, isn't it? He asked, voice smug as hell. Just hit, I said, grinning. I'm officially solvent, single, and sanctified. He laughed. Sanctified? Yeah, I said. You try surviving 6 years of Bianca and tell me it's not a religious experience. We both laughed for a solid minute before he said, "So what's the first purchase, Mr. Moneybags? Ferrari? Jet ski? Revenge blimp?" I sipped my coffee. Nope. Peace. Maybe a new toaster. Mine's been through too much emotional trauma. God, you're boring, he said. Yeah, but I'm boring with equity now. That afternoon, I did something radical. I went for a walk with zero purpose. No errands, no appointments, no passive-aggressive text messages waiting for me. Just air. The sun hit different when you weren't carrying emotional debt. I walked past the high-end boutiques Bianca used to drag me into. Those marble temples of insecurity where she'd buy $800 blazers to feel powerful. I used to sit on those uncomfortable little chairs near the dressing room, scrolling through my phone while she asked, "Does this say success or desperation?" The answer was always both. Now I walked past those stores like a man who'd been cured of an addiction. I stopped by a hole-in-the-wall diner instead, ordered a burger, and chatted with the waitress, a woman named Jo with purple hair and zero patience for nonsense. "You look like a man who just got out of something messy," she said. "Divorce," I replied. She nodded. So freedom fries with that. Make it double." She laughed and slid me a milkshake on the house. I don't know if it was the kindness or the cholesterol, but for the first time in years, I felt human again. When I got home, I walked around my townhouse, still half expecting to hear Bianca's heels clicking or her voice reminding me that the living room pillows weren't symmetrical enough for guests. The silence was golden. I'd decorated the place myself, minimal but warm, with colors that actually existed in nature. A bookshelf here, a couch that didn't feel like a museum piece, a kitchen table that invited coffee stains. My favorite part? The messy little corner where I left mail, keys, and receipts. The disaster zone, Bianca would have called it. I called it authentic. That night, I poured myself a drink and looked around. It wasn't grand, it wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. No joint accounts, no designer nonsense, no marble floors that echoed arguments. Just me and my hard-earned sanity. A week later, I heard through the grapevine, "Okay, Marcus," that Bianca had moved into a downtown condo near her office. "Word is she hates it," he said over the phone. "Says the neighbors are too middle class." I snorted. "Yeah, God forbid she lives near people who budget." "Oh, and get this," Marcus added. "Her company's on the brink. Investors pulled out after they saw the financial discrepancies." "You mean the fraud we documented?" "Exactly." I took a sip of my whiskey and smiled. She wanted control. Now she's holding an empty steering wheel. "Poetic," Marcus said. "You should write that down." I did. On my mortgage-free paperwork. It was around that time I started doing something new, sleeping. Like actual, deep, REM cycle sleeping. No late-night anxiety. No sound of arguments echoing through my head. Just me and the occasional dream where I told Bianca, "No, actually, I won't be taking out the trash. You're the garbage here." A few weeks later, I decided to treat myself. I went furniture shopping, which felt strange after years of living in a showroom curated by Her Highness. I walked into a store called Comfy & Company, where the saleswoman asked, "What kind of vibe are you going for?" "Peaceful," I said, "preferably with lumbar support." She smiled. "So, recently divorced? Is it that obvious?" "You guys always buy recliners," she said. "Like it's a rite of passage." "Yeah, well," I said, testing out a chair. "This one reclines without judgment. I'll take it." A few days later, I sat in that recliner, eating takeout straight from the container, watching bad reality TV, and feeling like I'd ascended to a higher plane of existence. Bianca used to call shows like Married at First Sight intellectual junk food. I called them research. It wasn't all sunshine, though. Every now and then, nostalgia tried to sneak in. I'd see a couple holding hands on the street or catch a whiff of her old perfume at the grocery store, and for a split second, I'd feel that familiar ache. But then I'd remember the lock-changing text, the arrogance, the endless criticism, and suddenly that ache would vanish faster than her sense of accountability. A few days later, I got another text from her. I almost laughed when I saw the name pop up. "Bianca, we could have worked it out," she wrote. I stared at it for a long minute, then typed back, "You mean if I kept paying while you kept pretending?" No reply, just the typing dots that came and went like a ghost trying to haunt me. Later that week, I ran into Clarissa, yes, the mother-in-law from Purgatory, at a fancy grocery store. She spotted me near the organic produce section and froze like I was a tax auditor. "Adrian," she said, recovering with that fake smile of hers. "You look well." "I am," I said. "Very." She hesitated, clearly searching for an insult disguised as a compliment. "Bianca's had a tough time, you know. Divorce takes a toll." "Yeah," I said, grabbing a bag of apples. "On both parties. One just happens to bounce back faster." Her lips twitched. "You were always so analytical." "It's a gift," I said. "Keeps me from marrying another sociopath." I left her standing there, probably calculating how to spin that into a family scandal. By month 2, I'd fully adjusted to my new life. My mornings were quiet, my nights peaceful, and my bank account glorious. I even started painting again, something I hadn't done since before the marriage. Nothing fancy, just abstract stuff, splashes of color that felt like therapy. Marcus came over one night, saw the canvas in progress, and said, "Wow, so this is what healing looks like." "Yeah," I said, smirking. "Messy but valuable." He raised his beer. "To messy but valuable." We clinked bottles, and for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like a man recovering from something. I felt like a man rebuilding something better. Bianca kept trying to reach out now and then. Subtle attempts cloaked in checking in. "Hope you're doing okay. I still have some of your things. Maybe we can talk someday." I ignored every single one. You can't heal from someone while they're still in your inbox. But one night, curiosity got the best of me. I checked her social media. The same woman who once flooded feeds with designer outfits and fake humility was now posting long captions about finding herself and forgiveness. One quote read, "Sometimes we lose everything to gain perspective." I chuckled. Perspective was an expensive word for I messed up. Around that same time, I met someone, Lena, a barista at the cafe down the street, smart, funny, and allergic to drama. She had this way of listening that didn't feel like waiting to talk. Our first conversation lasted 2 hours, and not once did she ask what I did for a living. It was weirdly refreshing. She didn't care about titles or brands. She cared if the coffee was good and if the company was better. One afternoon, I told her about the divorce. Not in a bitter way, just matter of fact. She smiled and said, "So basically, you survived a business merger gone wrong." "Exactly," I said, "except the buyout was sweeter." We laughed, and it felt good. Real good. To laugh about it without the weight of old resentment dragging me down. Weeks passed, and one day, Marcus sent me a screenshot. It was Bianca's new LinkedIn post, proud to announce Rivera Strategies 2.0, a fresh start built on resilience. The comments were full of supportive emojis and people pretending to care. Marcus added a caption. "She rebranded failure into empowerment." "Classic," I replied. "She always did love spin accounting." Then I muted her name permanently. Emails, calls, social media, everything. It wasn't out of anger. It was because peace doesn't negotiate. Now my life looks nothing like it did before. My townhouse smells like coffee and quiet, not tension and candles. I spend weekends hiking, cooking, painting, or doing absolutely nothing, and loving every second of it. Sometimes I still think about how it all started, the naive guy who believed love was about compromise. I learned it's about respect, not submission. About partnership, not ownership. Bianca once said, "Numbers can't measure love." Maybe not, but they can measure effort, investment, and loss. And in my case, recovery. So yeah, the house sold for $710,000. My share came to $355,000. And the priceless part? The piece I bought with it. Sold, cashed, and completely unbothered. That's me. The man she underestimated now lives rent-free in her karma. The first morning in my new place felt like a scene from someone else's life. Quiet, sun spilling through the blinds, no tension humming in the air. Just me, my coffee, and the sound of nothing going wrong. I stood at the window, mug in hand, staring out at the city and grinned. I'd spent years thinking peace was overrated. Turns out, it's addictive. The house was smaller, sure, but it was mine. Every corner, every flaw, every loose cabinet handle whispered freedom. Marcus had joked, "You're the only guy I know who got divorced and upgraded his square footage." He wasn't wrong. Bianca could keep her designer misery. I'd take simple happiness any day. Sometimes I think about that text. I changed all the locks. I should send her a thank you card. She meant it as punishment, but she accidentally opened the door to my new life. I've got new locks now, new laughter, a fridge full of actual food instead of kale propaganda, and Wi-Fi that doesn't block Netflix for productivity. As I turned my new house key that morning, I smiled, really smiled. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about breathing again. Because nothing says freedom like a door that only opens for you.